welcome to the show. In today's video we'll be doing an unboxing of the Sovol SV07. This has been kind of a, should we do it, should we not do it? So a little backstory real quick. My wife has actually been kind of the backbone for most of everything that we've been doing 3D printing wise on the FDM side. We've collected a couple printers as you see from the channel, but this one is actually not for me. This one, as well as the Anycubic, are for my wife. She's been doing really good at some of the markets and stuff, selling some different 3D prints. We're an authorized dealer of a couple of Patreons, so it's been a lot of fun, but it's actually booming enough that we had to get another printer just to keep up with orders for her side of everything. So we're kind of creating a little bit of a print farm back here. And a quick little update, my longer is actually, you could say, in the shop, if you will, because the control board died on it, sadly. So it is not able to be as much of a backbone or a helper for anything that's going on her side of things. So that one I currently have a board, but I'm playing with and have to get that up and running. So more to come on that one, but back to the main reason you clicked on the video. So let's get to doing a quick little tear down of the box, see what's in her, and we're going to set it up and do a first print. Alright, the first thing that we come across is nice foam. Immediately we are met with the manual. This is actually a nice thick one. Let's see. Wow. 100% in English, and it gives everything, including an actual diagram for the control board. That would be nice to have for my longer. I actually have been having to look up and reference that to fix that. So, side note. Alright, so manual. Immediate first thing that we see next is the spool of filament, 200 grams of white, just basic PLA that comes with the unit, 1.75 millimeter. So that's nice. Let's see here. Got a couple little compartments that we can open up and see. Gently. We have the Sovol display, which this is actually a little kind of Raspberry Pi. So that's good. Another little compartment here. Ooh, this is actually the head. Gently pull that out. So this is the entire head unit for the Sovol. That is pretty big. Got some nice little LEDs on the bottom of it. And then we actually have our little auto leveling laser there. Alright. Next little thing here. These are in it. Looks like we have a bracket for the head. Actually, I think that might be for the fan assembly, because the fan assembly is right next to it. Ah, yes. So this, from the reviews, is kind of the infamous fan. If this had to have anything negative about it, this seems to be the one thing everyone complains about, is that this is a loud fan, which for what production it puts out, I think I'll be fine with that. Alright. Next in line we have the bearing, a little setup for the spool holder. So it spins pretty decent. They said one thing you can do, watching Aurora Tech and some of the other videos, is just take out one of the bearings to make it not spin as freely, but that actually seems kind of docile, not as overly spinny, but we'll see once we get a spool on it. Also in that first chunk of foam, we have our filament runout sensor and the arm for the actual spool holder as well. And this one is a injection molded plastic versus the actual spool holder itself. Feels like it's a combination of aluminum and plastic. So that's nice. And yeah, the little filament spool, or little filament runout sensor is on a swivel. Alright, so that looks to be the first chunk of foam. So we'll start, nice little pile right there. Alright, now we're met with what looks to be top of the gantry. This is very well into. Ah, yes. So here's our gantry. Top part of it is plastic, but again, looks like it is injection molded. Very stout, like I feel like I could actually lift up the printer by it and not feel like I'm creaking and plasticky. Alright, so looking through that, on the back here we have two anti-backlash little, what is that called? Lead screw anti-backlash. These are little guys that hook on there to hook your lead screw to your gantry. That's actually one of the upgrades I'm going to be putting onto the CR10 next. On the top here, it actually has really nice bearings that go in to help keep the lead screw from bending out and causing any distortion in the prints. And these are a little bit smaller, kind of pancake NEMA motors for NEMA 17s. It has all three already on the gantry and everything's set up. Our normal V wheels. We have a Gates belt on it that actually is properly tensioned. Nothing seems loose on here. It's one of the things that's suggested on a couple of these printers is to always check your concentric nuts on the back here to make sure that everything is nice and tight, and everything actually seems super tight, which is good to know. Alright, so we'll set this here very gently, kind of like that. Alright, so continuing into the box, we have our little baggie here. Looks like we have a couple of different zip ties, and it looks like the cable that goes to the display, and a variety of little baggies that are all notated, letting you know which one goes in first, and then it looks like an additional filament runout sensor. Maybe. Not sure exactly what that one is. We'll see here in a minute. Then you actually have the wheel in the front that will give you the ability to either advance or remove your filament as well by hand if you need to. Otherwise it'll just show which rotation it is going through, which is really nice for troubleshooting and also just changing filament. Have our power cable, another chunk of film, another chunk of foam, another chunk of foam, another chunk of foam, another chunk of foam. And let's see. So now we have just the actual main printer itself, it looks like, and then underneath looks to be the power supply. So gently, actually. So it looks like we actually have a PEI plate with an adhesive back on it, as well as we have our main textured PEI plate that actually has, that is the metal part that is magnetic, and this is just kind of, looks to be once you mar this one up, you can actually reattach a new face to it or attach this to a glass bed. That's good to have. Alright. Oh, this is the main part of it. Trying to find a good finger hold so I don't pinch nothing. Alright, so, okay, quick gander. Looks like we just have the main piece of foam on the bottom. Set that to the side there. Alright, so, yes, there are two additional chunks of foam that are super high density underneath the plate. Kind of roll that back a little bit. Yeah. And it looks like the bed is nice and free. The cable going to the back of the build plate is actually very nice quality, very thick. We don't just have a bunch of splayed wires like we have with most bed slingers. And the part that always wears out on it that you always have to print a little arm, or a lot of times they just throw in the SD card as an afterthought, is actually already nice and molded plastic. And this, it's like polycarbonate or something on the back here. That's pretty awesome. Aluminum bed wheels, and you actually have a nice cover that covers up the back belt for the motor so that nothing gets caught in there. I've had one or two kind of freak out moments where a little chunk of filament kind of wrapped in it for a second and popped itself out, but then I'm always questioning, is that ever going to be a main problem? So all in all, good things. We do actually have little machine spots for the gantry to sit on, so it's not just sitting on top of a cover. Still a bolt through on the bottom style. And it looks like, oh, that's the main arm. gantry belt as well. Connections to the display port. Alright, looks like we are at the assembly stage part of it. Alright, so we are assembled and we have it currently in just a base configuration. So one of the key things I forget to mention as well is it has a nice little compartment in the front here. It has your little nice tools. I ended up using those in the time lapse that you saw earlier. So 2 notes on the time lapse real quick. For the actual little display here, it's supposed to have 3 bolts. One of the bolts that I got actually was not machined. So there are no threads, and it is a rod that has like a sheared off mark on it. So I ended up having to pull out my little screw box, and I did luckily have the right size for it, but that was a little disheartening. And I'm like I'm saying, manufacturer defect, so I don't think it's going to be in every one of them, but that did happen to me. Another thing was on the actual main print head here for the accelerometer. As per the manual here, I had to take out one of the top left from the backside screws here to put in the M316 bolt. That is just a little bit longer than this guy here, so that way it could still hold the print head on nice and tight, as well as the accelerometer. One thing that was kind of annoying with the manual is it doesn't actually tell you a lot of cable management. You kind of got to pick through it a bit, so a few of these things are a bit confusing. As the cable for the accelerometer, for instance, it is routed over to the display, but then I have a long cable to deal with. Otherwise, the long cable is not long enough to go through the main ribbon, down and over up to it, and still actually move up and down. If this was absolutely pinned down, absolutely shoved to the side, it can almost reach, but then you can print with it. So it has to be routed on this side, but there are no holes for cable management. So I'm left with this kind of just dangling here. So we're going to see how that goes, but that part I kind of glanced at a couple videos online, but didn't see anyone really remarking on that part. As for the tools, side note on that one, we have a standard and a Phillips screwdriver. We have a nice little spatula for popping off your print heads or making happy trees. We have the little USB here, which is kind of a knockoff of the, quick little side note here, so it's kind of like a knockoff version of a SanDisk that came in a lot of other printers that I've gotten. The Cheaty Tech had it in there, so it's kind of reminiscent of that, but this is the NeTac, which I've actually seen that pop up a couple of times, so it is a brand, but it definitely looks exactly like SanDisk. We have our little nippers here that come in the kit, as well as our Allen keys. It looks as though, is this the main head? Oh, nope, there is one on there. So you do get one spare extra nozzle that is a 0.4, as well as you get a nice tool. This one I have actually not purchased, but I've been meaning to. This is for getting your nozzle off. It's a little nozzle tool. It has a 6mm on it, which is awesome, and it's got a nice 90° on that, as well as we have a 10mm and 8mm wrench, which is awesome. That helps out greatly. We have tweezers, really nice, super sharp, like watch yourself, kind of sharp tweezers, as well as we have a little, I'm thinking this would be for like a reset switch, goes in for your nozzle, that can clean that out. And that is just a little fancy kit. It is kind of goofy how they have it set up, because this, as it came, was set underneath this foam. So it's a little kind of afterthought feeling. and then you have your screwdrivers kind of get set in there. And you got to kind of scrunch it down a little bit. But it is a nice flush fit in there. So besides the assembly of it, I did have to tighten the main belt for the bed, and I did kind of tighten and play around with the head here. We're going to play around with the concentric nuts, but I am getting kind of a stop and stutter point for the head. Originally I thought it was potentially this cooling fan here, but with or without this on, I still am getting a stop and stutter kind of in the dead center. And it's sporadic enough I can't really pinpoint what it is, so we're going to try loosening one of the concentric nuts and see if that fixes it for us or if it's something that might just break in. But yeah, what you should be left over with are these 3 bags, which is 4 bolts of the M430 and some spacers, as well as nuts for the M4 bolts. This is to make this a solid bed instead of having the wheels on here to adjust for bed leveling. If you want to go off of just mesh, like the Anycubic Viper, then you can use those. But otherwise, you should have a bunch of empty bags, your little extra sheet, and your filament. And I did pop this in on top. So yeah, let's turn her on and see how she looks. Alright, we got her all plugged in. And from what we've seen, they say it's about 10 or so seconds for the little pie in here to get all of its power and turn on, so it's not unusual. And there it is. Ooh, little galaxy. Yeah, that's nifty. So we're going to go through a connection here with our network and everything. Please follow steps below to calibrate the machine. Refer to manual for details. Operation Z calibration setting offset. Operate bed level to adjust flatness of the bed. Operate bed mesh automatic level. Alright, and it is off to the races, but I do a level on the bed, and then we will probably start up homing and do our first test print. Alright, so it looks like we have one benchy done in exactly 26 minutes. Got a little like brim on it. So overall, there's not much real like ringing, a little bit of ringing right around here. We have one little tiny defect up in the little wheelhouse and some little strings, but keep in mind this is what came on the SD, or rather the USB drive. And that quality is, I mean, a lot of times this is what you kind of strive for, and this is before you even tune it. So playing around with that profile, making sure everything is exactly the way you want it. Alright, so to give you kind of an idea, this is printing right now, so I'm elevating my voice ever so slightly, but you can still hear me just fine. It is a bit louder for that fan in the back, but it is still manageable. If I were to be sleeping right next to it, it can be annoying, it can be bothersome. Some people very much enjoy absolute calm and peace when they're sleeping, so this isn't something for a dorm. You don't want to be that guy in the dorm room being like, hey bro, I got this really awesome printer in the mail, and he hates you for the entire semester or until you are done. So keep that in mind. Other than that, if you are going to be having this on like your nightstand in your living room and your significant other is not so happy with loud items, this is also in that same category. It's a little bit up there, but if you are in the 3D printing realm, or you have a print farm, or you have a garage or something like that, this isn't really bad at all. I've had a lot worse, louder things on the channel. You know, like planer, anything else like that will make a lot more noise, but it is also just kind of give and take in that regard. But it is roughly around like a hair dryer in the next room, or a dishwasher when you're right next to it. That's about as loud as it gets, unless you have a really old, loud dishwasher. But Roartech said this is around 60 decibels, so if you have a good range or idea of about what that would be in comparison to something in your life, you'll have kind of a rough estimate of how this is. But we're not spiking or changing the audio super loud so you can hear me, or noise canceling anything. But other than that, this thing is running like a champ. We got that Venchi out of it. We're working on the skull off of the thumb drive. So it's running great, and Clipper is not near as hard as you would expect it to be. It's intuitive, and if you just think about the terms they use, they are slightly different than normal 3D printer jargon. So you got to kind of just learn the new term for it, but it's not something super. I don't have to code on this to get it to do what I want it to, and I don't have to launch a web browser to be able to integrate, to do this, to do that, to get it to. I can plug this in anywhere and just run it off the drive. So pretty awesome, pretty good so far. So we'll give you an update down the road if anything else arises or anything odd, but otherwise we're printing and off to the races right off the get-go. So thank you all so very much for tuning in, and hopefully this helped you out, and we will catch you in the next one. If you haven't already, like the video if you enjoyed it. Thumbs up always helps us in that regard. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell if you want notifications each and every time a video comes out. Thanks again. Bye.